Hey everybody, I'm Bede, aka the Terrible Australian of Super Podcast, and welcome to the 8th edition of the Godzilla Diaries. Now in this one I will be talking about the films Terror of Mechagodzilla, and as well as the Return of Godzilla. So let's get right into it. Terror of Mechagodzilla. Now this one actually takes place not too long after the events of the previous film, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. Basically it sort of begins with a submarine trying to find the remains of Mechagodzilla after his battle with Godzilla, and unfortunately they discover a brand new monster lurking beneath the waters called Titanosaurus. I think that's how you pronounce the name, but and the ship gets destroyed, and then of course the government and as well as Interpol just try to find a way to stop Titanosaurus, but then they find out that some aliens have actually recovered Mechagodzilla and are actually going to use both Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus to destroy Tokyo, but they're also doing it with the help of a Japanese scientist by the name of, let me find him, Dr. Mafuni, so that they are, because a couple years earlier he was the one who sort of discovered the creature Titanosaurus, and also sort of found a way how to also control did a sort of experiments to control animals' minds so that we as humans can make them do our bidding. But of course he pretty much got scoffed out of the scientific community, and he sort of in a way teams up with the aliens to seek revenge against the people of Earth, and also has the help of his daughter named Katsura, who has the ability to actually to communicate with Titanosaurus, and that's because there's an accident that happened years earlier that she was almost died, and the aliens were able to save her. But the thing is, the only way they could do that is by making her into a cyborg. Now, I'm not making this up. This is all part of the plot of the film. So, this one though, and also there's sort of a bit of a love story between Kurosawa and another character in the film, which I feel didn't really add much to the film at all. But other than that, this film though, I think I have to admit, while it is watchable, it's definitely just kind of just average. I have to be honest though, I kind of wish the series kind of starts, at least at around this point, to kind of start doing something different, because the last couple of films in the series have basically had sort of a plot about aliens sort of taking over the planet, and it's sort of starting to get a bit kind of dull at the moment, because that plot's been used the last few times, and it would have been nice if the film actually did something different. But what so like and I did find while there are some interesting sort of elements within the film, particularly with Dr. Mafuni. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, so forgive me if I'm miscorrecting his name. His character is interesting as well, sort of, because he wants to take revenge on the people of Earth, but of course he sort of goes back and forth whether he's actually doing the right thing. And also his daughter Kasura also has that sort of same thing as well, because she's helping her father, and she's sort of conflicted about what she's doing, because when she meets I believe, which character, Ichinose, that's the name I was thinking of before. They sort of develop a relationship, and that because of him, she sort of gets these conflicted feelings and all that about wanting to help the aliens take over the Earth. What's interesting though, I'm not sure if these are exactly the same aliens that were in the previous film, because at one point one of them sort of, their face falls off and you see their real face, and it's completely different from what we saw in the previous film, which was sort of like these ape-like creatures. So I'm not exactly sure if they're the same ones. But if anyone out there can tell me otherwise, definitely let me know. Overall, the whole film is but one of the things, but definitely the best aspect of the film is definitely again the sort of the monster battle sequences. These ones were really good. With Godzilla going up against both Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus, it's a pretty brutal battle between him and these two monsters, and they're sort of before Godzilla shows up, the other two monsters sort of again sort of destroy the city and all that, and it's a pretty well done like sequence. Like I'm pretty taken aback just how full on it was. And so the battle between them's pretty cool as well, and Godzilla sort of gets his ass handed to him for most of it, until of course he wins in the end. And what's interesting about this film is that this reunites. This film actually brought back Hishiro Honda, who of course I've mentioned before in previous videos, was the one who directed the original Godzilla and as well as made other films in the series. And this is the first one he's done since, I believe, All Monsters Attack. So this is his return to the series, and it would also be the very last one he'd done, because while sort of doing research on this film, Terror of Mechagodzilla actually at the time was the lowest grossing Godzilla film in the series at the time. And so they decided to basically they did want to make another one, but the next installment wouldn't come for another few years later. So this one actually marked the end of the Showa period, which of course was the period between 1954 with the original Godzilla, but right up to this film, which came out in 1975. So that was the sort of the Showa period. And so the next Godzilla film wouldn't come out which I find interesting. So if I had to rate Terror of Mechagodzilla, I give it about a 2.5. Like, it is watchable, but it's just been there, done that. And so it didn't really add anything new to the plate. Like I said, but it just, like I said before, this would be the last Godzilla for many years. Like, usually they came out every year or two, but the next one wouldn't come out for another 9 years. And that was in 1984, which actually marked the 30th anniversary of the Godzilla series. And that film that they brought back they brought Godzilla back in, was called The Return of Godzilla, which was actually what's interesting about this film for two reasons. Number one, this actually was the beginning of a new period for the character, which is called, I believe, I might be getting the name wrong, so the Heisei period, or Heisei period, which was basically, this is the filmmakers rebooting the character. And what's interesting about this one is this film kind of takes sort of the approach that Superman Returns did with the Superman films, is that this movie, like, doesn't follow any of the continuity that followed the Godzilla films after the first one. So this one, it completely ignores all the films that came after the very first film, and this film actually acts as a direct sequel to the 1954 film. So which I think is pretty interesting. And also, this one actually goes back to the tone of the very first one by going back to a sort of more darker, more serious film, while sort of tackling some really interesting and thematic elements and ideas. And I have to say, this one is actually, so in a way, it was kind of reminded me how it was something like the James Bond films, like The Living Daylights and Casino Royale, because the previous Bond films were a bit more silly and over the top and slightly cartoonish, while these two films were definitely sort of much more both reboots of the franchise, but they were sort of much more darker and grittier. So this film kind of acts that way as well. And I have to say, I really enjoyed Return of Godzilla. I thought it was a really well-made film, and it did remind me a lot of the very first one. Not as good, but I do appreciate the fact that they wanted to do something that was a bit more serious, a bit more darker, but also had some themes that they wanted to explore as well. I think the cast all did a really good job in this film. I found the human characters pretty compelling and very interesting, and also some of them, like there was the character of the Prime Minister, the Japanese Prime Minister, which I thought was a really interesting character because there's sort of a, well, I should explain what the plot of this film is about. Sorry. Basically, Godzilla rises again, and basically attacks Tokyo, and so it's up to the help of a professor, a reporter, and one of the survivors of one of Godzilla's attacks earlier in the film, and his sister, sort of try to find a way how to stop Godzilla. And also the Japanese Prime Minister has to deal with ways of trying to defeat Godzilla, because during the film, Godzilla actually attacks a Russian nuclear sub, and of course for a little bit there, the Russians think the Americans did it, but they soon find out that Godzilla did it. And there's an interesting and pretty well done scene where the Japanese Prime Minister has a meeting with both the representatives of both the US and Russia, and those two are sort of basically saying we think the only way to defeat Godzilla is with nuclear weapons, and he's sort of very conflicted, and he decides that no, we're not going to use nuclear weapons against Godzilla. We're going to find another way to beat him. And I thought the actor who played him, by the name of Kaiju Kobayashi, I'm again butchering names, sorry. I thought he did a really good job as the Prime Minister. I found he brought a lot of interesting layers to the character and made him such a very three-dimensional person, and you can sort of see the conflict that he's going back and forth with, whether he's doing the right thing and all that. And I thought he did a good job. And also there's other interesting characters as well. There's the professor character, Professor Mekioko Hayashida. I'm sort of reading the names off the Wikipedia page. He's interesting character as well, because in the film we discover that he actually lost his parents 30 years earlier to that in the attacks that Godzilla made on Tokyo, and sort of him when he was younger had wanted to have revenge against Godzilla if he ever came back, and has since accepted that he doesn't have those feelings of revenge anymore. So there's an interesting element to that character, but everyone in the film is pretty good, and also the sort of the scenes with the destruction of Tokyo are definitely very hard hitting, and definitely remind me a lot of what happened in the first film, because not only is there a lot of carnage, but you also had that sort of weight of seeing these poor civilians of Tokyo being killed by Godzilla, being trampled, buildings being destroyed, and all that. So it brings a lot of weight to that, and also there's some really well done action sequences as well. It's very well directed, and there's another interesting subplot where behind the backs of the Japanese, the Russians they are going back and forth whether to launch a nuclear attack against Godzilla anyway, and then Godzilla destroys one of their secret boats, and then one of the Russian sailors tries to disarm the bomb before it gets released, but he arrives too late, and then of course there's with the Prime Minister trying to figure out how to stop the nuclear bomb from not only destroying Godzilla, but also the people of Tokyo. So there's a lot of interesting things in this film. There are some things like the only negatives I can say about the film, there are some continuity issues. The characters sort of treat this like this was the Godzilla from the 54 film, even though we know for a fact that the one in the 54 film was killed. We saw him dead as a doorpost, and a couple other little things like that. But overall, this is a really good and very strong reboot of the franchise, and also marks a pretty strong beginning to this Heisei period of the series. And if I have to rate this one, I'm going to give this a solid 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it a lot. Well, that's the end of the 9th edition of the Godzilla Diaries. Now keep a lookout for the 10th edition, which I'll be talking about the recut Americanized version of the Return of Godzilla, which which was released in the US in 1985, known as Godzilla 1985, and as well as Godzilla vs. Biolante. So keep a lookout for that one, and I'll see you all later. See you, everyone. Bye.